Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com. Welcome to the show. Today I decided to talk about or get caught up on the DC Comics that I read, the New 52 stuff, what I like, what I was disappointed about, and I think just some general thoughts about the DC universe. So I'll start off today with the Justice League group of books. And out of that group, I read Justice League, of course, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, DC Universe Presents, Earth 2, and World's Finest. So first up, Justice League. When this was announced with Geoff Johns as writer and Jim Lee as the artist, I was really excited about it. And then you get the first 6 issues where you get the event that brought the Justice League together, which was Darkseid, of course, which I thought was a brilliant way to get these heroes together in a new way as opposed to the old origin story of the Appalachians, I believe, were the alien invaders that the Justice League fought. It was I thought, a really good story in terms of a bunch of heroes getting together and having a bunch of fights, and not only with the bad guys, the parademons and Darkseid himself eventually, but the conflicts between the characters. Now, having said that, I thought that they could have done, meaning Geoff Johns primarily, and DC Comics, I guess, in general. But anyway, Geoff Johns, I thought, could have done a better job at showing us the conflict between the characters, developing the relationships between the characters. Something that he has slipped even further away from, I think, in the next story arc that just finished up. There were a few tidbits, a few moments where that kind of came through, and that's really, I think, the strength of John's writing is these character interactions, the stories between the people that he did so successfully doing the Justice Society stories that he did, and Teen Titans for that matter. So I thought the title started off pretty strong for that first arc. Hasn't been so great on the second arc, but I am very much looking forward to the storyline that's coming up, the crossover, I guess, if you will, with Aquaman. And then, of course, they have the Trinity War coming next year. So it's a title that I will continue to get, I think, for the foreseeable future. And I'm really interested to see how this and the new Justice League of America book that's coming out, how those two books will play off of each other, if at all. But speaking of Aquaman, so that's the next book on the list for this category, and I have to say I have loved this book from day one. I know there's a lot of people out there who didn't like John's approach. This is Geoff Johns again doing the writing, with Ivan Reis and Joe Prado doing the art, which is just beautiful. It's gorgeous, great comic book style art. And I forgot to mention before that those two artists are coming on to the Justice League book, which, that's a great successor, or they're good successors to the Jim Lee stuff. So, in fact, I like Reis's work probably a little bit more in some ways than Jim Lee's. So this is, to me, Geoff Johns and Reis and Prado on the Justice League book. That would just be a good thing, I think. And tying into Aquaman. So Aquaman, like I said, I have loved from the beginning. I like John's approach, undercutting the whole, Aquaman being the weak link, if you will, of the Justice League. Aquaman can't do much. When in fact, he's quote unquote the ruler of the seas, which encompasses far more of the world than the landlubber heroes cover. So anyway, that being said, Aquaman has been a good read. I enjoyed the first storyline with the Reach. To a certain degree, it was kind of the monster of the week type of thing, but you get a little bit of history of Aquaman. Little bits keep coming out here and there as the title goes on, which is what I was hoping that Johns would do with the Justice League. And while he did do that, it was too little for my taste. But Aquaman would keep getting a little bit more and a little bit more. And this current storyline that just ended regarding the others, wow, talk about a lot of nuggets of information about Aquaman's past, and you get these his relationship with these new characters, the others. So I really enjoyed that storyline, and the upcoming, like I said, the upcoming crossover with Justice League, I think that's just going to be a really good storyline. And I hope that they continue to develop Aquaman and Mera, of course. That's been the nice surprise of the series, is seeing her and how she interacts with topside people. Next up is Wonder Woman, which was a delight. I'll just start off right there with that because of Brian Azzarello's approach to it, putting the mythology in the way up front in the way that he did, along with Cliff Chiang's art. Now, Cliff Chiang isn't doing every issue, but any issue that he does is just a beautiful looking book. But yeah, the Wonder Woman reacting to the gods around her and the new interpretation of the gods, I really do like that a lot. It's not the same old. I don't know how to put it, but just the standard, if you will, way of presenting these Greek gods that we've seen for so many years. I mean, it's kind of like how George Perez portrayed them in his Wonder Woman book back in 1987-ish, around that time frame. So it's different. I enjoy that. Wonder Woman is shown to be, again, a strong character. She's her own person, and that whole bit about Wonder Woman's origin not being what it traditionally was, and that could always change. These are just stories, right? A lot of what mythology is just storytelling over the years, over the centuries, and how those things affect us. And so, superheroes in many ways, as many people and more learned than I have pointed out, superheroes are a kind of mythology. Or at least those of us who love superheroes like to elevate it to that degree. But Wonder Woman's mythology previously to this, was that she was granted life from lifeless clay at the request of her mother. The gods took pity upon the queen of the Amazons and granted Diana life. But we find out that was just another story, at least in this story. And now we find out that perhaps Zeus, well, I mean, it's not just an implication. Zeus is her father now, which fits totally within the Greek myths. Zeus, liked to impregnate women and have a bunch of kids. And so here he is again doing that, and Wonder Woman is his daughter. I wish they would play with that a little bit more. I'm sure they will, but I didn't mind that so much as a lot of people did. So I'm really enjoying that. The only thing that I wish that they would do regarding Wonder Woman is be a little bit more consistent in how they are portraying the character, because she is one way in her own title, and if you go read the Justice League books especially, now she's appearing in some other stories, and I haven't read all of them. Batwoman I have read, but that's more consistent with how she is so far. I've only read the one issue, the first issue that she's appeared in. Anyway, she seems to be portrayed more in sync with what she's in Wonder Woman, but in Justice League she's like a totally different character. And even the way that she looks, not necessarily, because she has the same costume and everything, but I don't know, her bearing, her body language is different. She seems very much more so a new person to the world in Justice League, which made sense in the first story arc, but not so much in the second, than she does in Wonder Woman in her own title. So anyway, I hope that they correct that, or at least have a little bit more continuity for this character. DC Universe Presents. I was, out of all of the titles that they announced that were, more or less new. Because before we had a Justice League book, we had a Wonder Woman book, we had a Superman book, et cetera, all the Batman books. I was really looking forward to the DCU Presents because we would get a book, an anthology book of some sort that would focus on other characters besides, the main ones. And so, very excited to read that. And then we get the 5-part Deadman story, which was okay, but that really could have been done in, 2 or 3 issues as opposed to 5, and I question, the decision to feature Deadman in the outset. But coming out of Brightest Day with the focus on Deadman, I can kind of see why they want to do that. Anyway, not a very strong opening, in other words. However, you get into the Vandal Savage story with his daughter. By James Robinson. That was really good. I enjoyed that quite a bit. I am looking forward to the next arc of several issues. I'm not quite sure how many of those are, but where you get Black Lightning and Blue Devil. And Blue Devil has always been a favorite character of mine, so I'm really curious to see how they reintroduce that character into this new DC universe. And then finally, in the Justice League books category of books, we have probably what are my, I was going to say my 2 favorite, but I really enjoy Aquaman and Wonder Woman. So I will say 2 additional favorites out of the Justice League category. And I kind of think of them as sister books, so I'm kind of talking about them together. But Earth 2 and World's Finest. This was part of the second wave of books coming out from DC. And boy, I talked about how I was really excited to read DC Universe Presents and Justice League. Well, Earth 2 and World's Finest, especially Earth 2, man, was I excited to read these books. Earth 2 written by James Robinson with wonderful art by Nicholas Scott, and World's Finest written by Paul Levitz with art by Kevin Maguire and George Perez. So we get a new Earth 2, and I say that because this Earth 2 is different from my Earth 2, which is to say the the pre-crisis Earth 2, and even different from, I believe, than the Earth 2 that we've seen before the New 52 universe started. I may be wrong about that. I'm trying to remember stories that I read where we saw that Earth 2. This is after 52 ended, so all of the multiverse returned, and there was an Earth 2 and other Earths going on. And that Earth 2, I believe, did have more Justice Society-like characters, but I don't know. Again, I don't know if this is the same Earth 2. Anyway, doesn't matter, because here's this Earth 2, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been a good. I think it has some pretty good pacing. I like the characterizations. Alan Scott's always been a favorite of mine, no matter what version of him that we get, pre-crisis, post-crisis, New 52 version, whatever. And we've got him, and he's integral to the current storyline going on between Earth 2's version of the Green and the Gray, which is personified by Solomon Grundy, which is, of course, an old enemy of Green Lanterns from previous stories. So I like that tie-in. And then you get Jay Garrick as the Flash with his weird-looking helmet. Some of the character designs or the relaunch, I'll say, not liking them so much. And that helmet, no, I don't care for it at all. But I do like Hawkgirl in this. I'm looking forward to more heroes showing up. And while I haven't read a lot of these, I just got my first 2 weeks of September books, and I'm reading through those. So I haven't read all of the Zero issues, but that Earth 2 Zero issue featuring that world's Trinity along with Supergirl and Robin, I really enjoyed that. That was a good story. I kind of hope we see more flashback tales featuring that Trinity. It'd be nice to see that, but that's not the focus of Earth 2. So anyway, on the other side, you have World's Finest, where you have the former Supergirl and Robin, now Huntress and Power Girl, stuck on Earth 1, I guess. Is that what we're actually calling this Earth? I'm not even sure of that. But for the purpose of this discussion, I'll call it Earth 1. And them trying to get back and just coexist on this world. I've really enjoyed the interaction between Power Girl and Huntress, although I want more. I was really worried about Paul Levitz doing this book when it was first announced because I have not enjoyed him on Legion of Superheroes. And his Legion of Superheroes from the 80s is one of my very favorite runs of all time. So I was really disappointed in his returning to Legion of Superheroes, and so much to the point that I dropped the book after 6 issues. But then I read his Huntress miniseries and was very impressed with that story. And, of course, as the series was coming out, there was some chatter about how this Huntress may be a Huntress from another world and not the Huntress that we have been reading for, years and years. And indeed, it turned out to be that way. And I've really enjoyed that. On that book, I really like how flashback sequences are drawn by Kevin Maguire, and the newer stuff was drawn by George Perez. The first storyline, though, so far not the best, but still enjoyable. I am looking forward to seeing how Huntress interacts with Damian. Damian is always a nice foil to throw at any character, especially in the Bat family. So that'll be fun to read, I imagine. So out of the Justice League books, I'm gonna pick a gem. Which book is like either the best or probably the most surprising to me that I enjoy it so much. And in this case, it would be Aquaman. Now, I knew going into this with Jeff Johns, I was probably going to get a pretty good story, and I knew Ivan Hayes' work, so I knew from that creative end it was probably going to be successful. But to take Aquaman and make him cool, which is what I think they have done, that is very surprising. And at one point, I can't remember when it was, but at some point, maybe the 3rd month after the New 52 launched, Aquaman outsold any Marvel comic that month, which, wow, that's just amazing. So that's kind of like my gem of the Justice League category. Let's move on to the Superman group, which is pretty short because I only read 2 of these books, and that is Action Comics and Superman. Action Comics with Grant Morrison, done and done. That is, I knew that would be a fun read. I mean, consider what Grant Morrison did with All-Star Superman, and him coming into the in-continuity Superman stories, and the way that he tied the various ages of Superman, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, all that stuff. I really liked how he incorporated elements of all the various ages of Superman into this book. Now, I have to say I didn't particularly care for the idea of him running around in a t-shirt and jeans and those work boots, but it made a lot of sense considering the Golden Age, I guess, aspects. There have been times, though, I will say that I got a little confused about where we were with the story, because there's a lot of time hopping in this storyline or in these issues. But I still enjoyed it. Looking forward to seeing what else Grant comes up with, although I know that he is leaving the book fairly shortly, so I'm curious to see if I will continue with it if Grant Morrison isn't there to steer that ship. The other book I read, I mentioned Superman. I love Superman. I really do. That he's one of my very favorite characters. A lot of people, Batman's their guy, and I love Batman. Don't get me wrong, but there's just something about Superman that I have always loved and will continue to love. And so I try to support that character by buying his books like I need to. It's Superman, but look at how many Batman books are on the shelf, and compare that to Superman. The guy who started it all. Back in 1938, and now. The Superman family of books is 4 books, and I only read 2 of them. So there's something there that DC, I don't know, lost their way with Superman, and I keep hoping that they'll find it. And I thought they had it with Grant Morrison doing Action Comics, but with Superman, again, when that book was announced, George Perez was writing it and doing some of the art there, so. I fully expected a really good story, a really good comic, and that's not what we got. And now it has come out since, George Perez is no longer on the title, but it's come out that, editorial was a little, I don't know, poking their fingers in a little too much, screwing things up, shall we say. So, maybe that title at least was a victim of too much editorialness going on. So I'm hoping that will change over time. I said I only get Action Comics and Superman, but I will be getting pretty much if they're doing any kind of crossover stories like the one that's coming up with the Hell character. So I'll be getting those issues of Superboy and Supergirl that crosses over there. So the gem of the bunch, well, that's Action Comics, of course. So I think I've said enough about that. Let's go on to Batman, where now this is the surprising thing about the New 52 titles. Going into it, I try to give a comic at least 3 months, if not 6, to prove to me that I should continue to get this comic long term. And I was really surprised that within the first few months, up to 6 months into the run, the new titles, that I liked and was getting so many Batman titles. Whereas before the relaunch, I maybe picked up 1 or 2. And now I read 7 titles of the Batman family. And that, of course, is Batman, Batman Incorporated, Batman and Robin, Batgirl, Batwoman, Birds of Prey, and Nightwing. So let's start off with Batman. What a delight that has been with Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo on art. I have to admit, though, I did not care for Capullo's art at first. It reminded me of 90s art, it reminded me of Spawn, but over time I've really come to appreciate his art. And it doesn't hurt that the guy, he's just a great guy. I saw him at the last Emerald City Comic Con, and his passion for this title and his work on it was just infectious, and I've really grown to like it. That whole Owl storyline before it became a cross-series event, that was really cool. So I'm really looking forward to now the next storyline, which is the Joker's return under Snyder's pen. So I can't wait to see where that goes. Batman Incorporated, I enjoyed that immensely. Again, this is Grant Morrison, right? So how could that be wrong? I enjoyed that before the relaunch, and then it came out as part of the second wave, and I'm still enjoying it, but it seems like a separate entity from everything else, and that's fine. It's just an odd thing, considering the relaunch, they wanted this cohesion. At least that's how I perceive it anyway. So I'm curious to see where this is going to go, and with Grant Morrison leaving Action Comics here fairly soon, I wonder what's going to happen with this title, because I don't know that they've announced that he's leaving that title, but I can only assume that he would. Next up is Batman and Robin, and my gosh, this has been a huge surprise to me. I mean, I got the Batman and Robin title that Morrison started, that featured Dick Grayson as Batman, and the relationship between him and Damian was fantastic. I really enjoyed that title and read it all the way till its end before the relaunch. Decided I'd keep with it just to see what would happen now that Bruce was back as Batman, to see that father and son dynamic. It hasn't been a disappointment. Every issue has been a delight in some way, and I can't wait to read the next one. So I'm just going to say right now, this is the gem of this category for me. The main title, Batman, is really, really close though, but Batman and Robin has been great. Batgirl, this was a hard one for me in some ways, because I was so in love with Brian Q. Miller's title featuring Stephanie Brown. And I'm not going to get into the whole Stephanie versus Barbara Gordon, because while I love Stephanie, that incarnation of that character, pre-52, New 52, I like Barbara Gordon too. And I don't particularly care whether she's Oracle or Batgirl. What sold this title for me, though, was Gail Simone writing it. So I wanted to see how that would be, and to see how they portrayed this Batgirl, especially considering they were still maintaining the whole Killing Joke aspect of her character, and how that would affect her. This this perhaps has not been as strong as I thought it would be, but I still enjoy it. Same could be said with the Batwoman title. J.H. Williams' art is beautiful, beautiful stuff. I love looking at it, the design work of it. It doesn't look like a normal comic, and I like that. I like the character, but I don't know, that first storyline was okay. Her situation now, while somewhat interesting, is still just okay. And it's not the same when Williams isn't doing the art. And not that I expect him to have to do the art chores every issue, as well as, he's also developing the story. But I don't know, that it's just, I had this feeling about this title before the relaunch. Am I just so enamored with the art that I'm overlooking the deficiencies of the story or the character development? And I think that might be a little bit of it. Character development, I think, is there. It's just, I don't know, the plot of the book. It's just okay. Birds of Prey has been a surprise to me. I really enjoyed the Birds of Prey series that was out before the relaunch. So I wanted to see where this would take us with these characters. And that first storyline was pretty fun. I enjoyed that because it's kind of like every issue is okay, I'm going to get the next issue. I'm going to get the next issue. It's not like I'm looking for a reason to stop reading it, but it keeps giving me a reason to read it as I go on every issue. So I really like that. I would like to see a lot more of the interaction between the characters when they're not reacting to the dangers and the situations they're in. I like how there's a very few core members of the team, and Dinah brings in other people to supplement the group depending on the mission and objectives. So, they brought in Katana for a while. I believe that I think I remember reading that she's going to be in the new Justice League of America title. So I'm not sure if she'll continue in Birds of Prey. Probably not. But they brought in Batgirl. They had Poison Ivy in it for a while too, and that was really interesting, especially the way the story turned with her, actually being the bad guy of the story. So I like that. And then finally we have Nightwing, who, if you've listened to the podcast or read the blog for any length of time, you know that Nightwing or Dick Grayson has been one of my very favorite characters ever since I read him in New Teen Titans. So, of course, when the relaunch, Nightwing getting his book again, I decided I was going to try it out and see where it took me. It's been okay. This is kind of in the same category as Batgirl and Batwoman. I enjoy it. It's not a stellar piece of work, but I like it. I really enjoyed the circus storyline that they did, although I did not care for how it turned out. And then other than, at first with the costume, with Dick Grayson as Nightwing having the red splash of color on him instead of the blue that we've had become accustomed to, which I didn't mind at first, but now I kind of wish they'd go back to the blue. I don't know. Getting nostalgic, I guess, but there you go. See, I already did the gem of the book. So that's Batman and Robin. I think I'll stop there. I'll take a look at the rest of the New 52 titles in a future episode. But before I go, I wanted to talk about some feedback I got from the last episode. A lot of what I talked about in the previous episode was a bunch of podcasts that I listened to, comic book podcasts and others. But I got some feedback from that I wanted to just point out. So after I released the episode, I tweeted that I talked about a bunch of other podcasts, and I threw in the Twitter names of those people or groups that release those podcasts, just to let them know that I was talking about them, and if they were interested, they could listen. And then I also just kind of threw out there by itself, what other podcasts should I be listening to? And so Stanford Harvey Jr. asked me if I was listening to 11 O'Clock Comics with 5 question marks. And I have listened to that podcast in the past. It's not one that I listen to all the time, It's kind of like I think I mentioned this in the last episode. I listen to some, I don't listen to them for a while, I come back, I listen to a few. Just some just haven't grabbed me as much as others, and 11 O'Clock Comics is one of those. It's not to say that I don't like the podcast. It just doesn't keep me interested for the long term, or for consistently, I should say. But because Stanford Harvey Jr. has suggested, I'm looking at that again, or listening to that again. So thank you for that. I appreciate that feedback. And then a gentleman by the name of James Ford contacted me and said he and his brother do a comic podcast called The Wombmates. And he asked me to give them a listen. And so I have listened to one episode, and it's really interesting to see. So these guys are brothers. They have this shared experience with comics and their love of these things. So I've listened, like I said, I've listened to one episode, and I have another one queued up to listen to. And then finally, Mr. Peter Rios listened to the episode and tweeted to me, really enjoyed episode 32. Good pacing, personal, learned more about the host. Well done. Thank you so much, Peter. It really means a lot to me, your comments, your thoughts about that, just because I have a lot of respect for your work. So that meant a lot to me, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So for anyone else out there, that's listening, what podcast do you listen to? And what podcasts do you listen to that you think I should listen to? I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. Be sure to let me know. You can leave comments at the blog at longboxreview.wordpress.com. You can tweet me at longboxreview. I have the Facebook page as well, or you can email me at longboxreview@gmail.com. That's it for this episode. Thank you again for listening. Talk to you later.